Hello there, and welcome to the break room. Listen, let me ask you, have you attempted to set out to have a self-care routine, but you're not being consistent with it? Or you say to yourself, listen, once I finish helping everyone else and serving everyone else, then I'm going to get my self-care, but then you never get to it. I know. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up. It's okay. Again, you're in the break room. This is our self care safe space. And so glad to have you here. So, welcome again to the break room. I am Deetra Dennis, and I am the self care coach for nurses. And I empower the multi passionate nurse to prioritize her MVP, the most valuable patient, which is herself, so that she can show up as the best version of herself and impact the well-being of those connected to her. So again, as I mentioned before, the break room is our self-care safe space for nurses so that you can, have an opportunity to get refreshed and renewed so that you can return back to those tasks at hand for the day. So we are streaming live to our YouTube channel as well as to Facebook and to LinkedIn. So glad to have you there. Go ahead and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and everybody on each platform. If you will like the video, share it with someone who you feel could value from the information that we discuss in our safe space, and go ahead and comment in the below so that we can have dialogue. Again, it's not a monologue, it's a dialogue. It's our self-care safe space. So on tonight, we are talking about the self-care essentials for a multi-passionate nurse. Now listen, I know, as a multi-passionate nurse myself, our intentions are well-meaning, but our execution, listen, we just sometimes have a challenge with executing the self-care. It's well-meaning, but we never get to it because we are, in a sense, being everything to everybody and then putting ourselves last. But listen, we're going to switch that and really talk about, again, the self-care essentials for a multi-passionate nurse. So, I like to keep it brief. So there are more, but three that we're going to talk about tonight. The first one is we're talking about be proactive in engaging in self-renewal activities. I'm going to say that again. Be proactive about engaging in self-renewal activities. It is imperative for us to do this because in order for us to show up as the best version of ourselves, it's important for us to have that self-renewal. And I know so often self-care renewal or self-care period, self-renewal or self-care, it doesn't appear to be something of an urgent nature. So we tend to put it off, we put everything else before it, but it is, again, essential for us to do that. And remember, we talked about this a little more when we had our time together of putting first things first as a multi-passionate nurse. And so, again, I want to give us an example. I'm not sure if you had the opportunity to read this book entitled "The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People" by Stephen Covey. Well, listen, I'm going to read a little snippet from it, and let's see how that resonates with you. Okay, so in the book, again, he has the 7 habits, and the seventh one is entitled "Sharpen the Saw." And he, in the book, mentioned that this is the essential or the fundamental of all the other 6. So he gave an example of this guy who was what he entitled an ineffective tree cutter, because this guy, he was cutting down this tree with a handsaw. And, he was cutting it and was very, very fatigued, but he was determined that he was going to get the job done, before he would stop. And so he went on to mention as well that this guy was very exhausted from the grueling work, but he didn't stop. He was just, headstrong and determined he was going to finish cutting down that tree. Well, the lesson in this is that out of his determination and his zeal to cut that tree down, the gentleman was blinded by the fact that he could have just stopped and sharpened the saw so that it would have been more effective and not having to work so hard. Now, again, let me ask you, does that resonate with you? It may not be cutting down a tree, but it could be you're doing a whole lot of things, or doing over committing, over promising, just doing a whole lot. And you're saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to get to that self-care in a minute, but you don't stop to do that. And so type in the chat if that's you. Remember, we talked about signs of burning the candle at both ends. That, to me, what the tree cutter sounds like, signs that he's burning the candle at both ends. Type in the chat if that resonates with you. And so one of the other things too that Stephen mentioned is that our effectiveness, listen closely, our effectiveness lies in the balance between what we produce and our capability to produce. So if we live a life focused on producing while neglecting self-care, we will deplete the capacity to be productive. Now, does that sound like burnout to you? Sounds like burnout to me. So you type in the chat. And even if you're watching the replay, I want to, let's get engaged here. Does it sound like burnout to you? It sounds like it to me. So that was number one, being proactive and engaging in self-renewal activities. Sharpening that saw was a self-renewal would have been a self-renewal activities for that gentleman. So again, remember to do that. Number two is shift your self-care mindset. Everything begins with in the mind, your thoughts, your attitudes. It all begins in the mind and is essential for success. So two mindset shifts that I know I had to make a shift in my thinking when it came to self-care, because I was guilty about putting myself first, because I felt like if I put myself first, then I'm not being able to serve others. But again, the shift is just like using that example in number one. If you don't pause for self-care, then you're not really being as effective as you think, right? And so think of it like this. When you are pausing for self-care, is not only benefiting you, but is benefiting everyone connected to you or to whom you're serving or who you're helping, because you are able to give more and be able to show up as the best you, because you've had the opportunity to replenish and refresh yourself, and you can be more productive, right? So that was one of the mindset shifts that I had to do, because listen, I felt like, okay, if I say no or do something for me, I'm disappointing the person. But again, in actuality, if I pause to take care of me first, then they will reap the benefits of that, right? The other one was not having enough time for self-care. And it kind of goes a little bit hand in hand. But again, we make time for what we want to make time for. But there's another book that came to mind, and it's by BJ Fogg. And the name of the book is Tiny Habits, The Small Changes That Change Everything. So I know you're saying you don't have time, but do you have 5 minutes just to pause for meditation? Or 15 minutes just to walk or move your body, and however you move your body, be it dance, walk, whatever it may be, or taking time out in nature, or taking 15 minutes before you go to bed to read a book. Those are some things that you can do to have time for self, and that's going back to self-renewal as well. That's a self-renewal activity. But that's how you make that time. Again, think of, tiny habits, the small changes that change everything. Okay, so that was number two. And number three, the last one is build your confidence to say no. And knowing that no is a complete sentence. And remember the quote we talked about before is that if you say yes to someone else, be sure you're not saying no to yourself. So, and then the other thing is that when you learn to say no confidently, it helps you own your self care and it helps you in your overall well being. Now, is that something that you would love to do? Be able to your overall well-being. Again, as I mentioned, my mission is for you to prioritize your care so that you can be show up as the best version of yourself. So I really, really hope that those resonate with you. Again, number one, that you want to be proactive in engaging in self-renewal activities. Number two, shift your mindset, shift the way you think about self-care. And lastly, you want to build confidence to say no, or to build your confidence to say no. Now, as we talking about saying no and about our self-care essentials, I would love to invite you to a special edition of the break room on this coming Thursday on the 15th at 7 o'clock p.m. Now, one will be a private live stream. It's free, but it's going to be a private live stream that I would like to invite you to attend. And the title of that one is The Best Gift That You Can Give Yourself. So, I would love for you to come, and I'm going to put the link in the chat for you. It's there, but I also want to put it in the chat so that you will have it. And I know with some of the platforms, it doesn't allow you to, so I will have to, after the broadcast, I will put it in the comment section so that you can have it. And I would love, again, for you to join in that private live stream for that. And so, I have a quote last week. I don't know how I ended without doing the quote, but our quote for today, since we've been talking about the book from Stephen Covey, this is a quote that he has from the book as well. So he says that focusing on your self-renewal preserves and enhances the greatest asset you have. That is you. So I again invite you to like this video, comment if you're watching the replay, comment below. I would love to hear what resonated with you as it relates to the essentials, the self-care essentials for a multi-passionate nurse. And again, I invite you to come over on Thursday and so we can have a little private live stream on the best gift you can give yourself. So I wanted to see if there are any questions that come to mind to you or any comments that you have of what resonated with you. And if there aren't any questions, I know sometimes it's a delay, but if there are not any questions, like I said, I will put the link to the live stream in the comments again, because some of the platforms won't allow me to, even if I were to post it, it wouldn't allow me. So I will have to do it manually once this broadcast ends. And as always, I wish you a wonderful evening and a wonderful week. And I will see you on next Monday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And have a good one.